And finally, I want to make sure that the ASUC is not only survives, but is able to thrive in the future. So really important, because we are in, like we've mentioned, a serious economic crisis. We need to find ways to increase our revenues that does not affect students' pockets directly. We need to find, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we don't have a grants writer. We need to hire a grants writer to increase that revenue, and find different ways to take that burden off of students and increase our revenue so that our campus can continue to thrive and enrich everyone's life when they come here.
Thank you.
So, first and foremost, my main platform, the first one I talk about, is better management of the ACC and revitalizing it. As we all know, we're going to begin having to cut student groups because the contract we signed with the university says we can't dip them in the red, we can't go in the negative. So the first place that gets cut is going to be student groups because we have so many other guaranteed expenses like ASUC auxiliary staff that it's the first place to turn. So I'm really in favor of bringing in profitable companies that also fit within Berkeley's values, like Brazil Cafe, that has a local feel, but also will bring in more revenue back to our student groups. Also working with what we have, like the Cal Lodge, for example. A lot of students don't know we have that, but working to drive more people there. If it's used 20% of the time right now, coming up with incentives to put people out there, increase that 60-70%, maybe you get another couple $100,000 that can also go back to student groups, and you're working with what you have. Also, one of the things I'm running on is transparency, and I think it's a major problem that, like we're talking about, increasing student voice in what goes on. The president gets to meet with the chancellor every so often, once a month, and you get to sit down with them and talk about whatever you want. And I think it's a major problem that, well, I'm a senator, and I don't know what the president's going to meeting about. And it doesn't count if you're from the same party or if you're close to them. I want to put my agenda on the website that I talked to the president about, and have even a suggestion box where students can contribute to what I go in and what I speak to the chancellor. And so I can get more of a student voice, more of a feel, and also challenging the university when I have to, because I think if it's just me talking, then it's irrelevant. I'm the voice of the entire student body, and I need to hear them out before I know what to say. And finally, other ideas, just being innovative, like more case competitions or business plan competitions. We're talking about student voice in Lower Sproul, allowing our students to participate in what goes on, or how to make the current businesses more effective and efficient. Because I think it's wrong for student fees to subsidize businesses down there that aren't doing their job when we lack so much funding to give back to student groups. Student fees should not be subsidizing businesses, and we should look towards more profitable solutions that fit within Berkeley's values.
Thank you. Last question for the presidential candidates. Many of the ASUC auxiliaries on-campus businesses have been plagued by low revenue, sparking a contentious discussion on whether introducing more profitable operations, particularly Panda Express, would be a good move. As a student representative on the store operations board, how would you effectively balance the auxiliaries' need for profitable businesses and students' interests as to what kind of businesses are on campus? Again, many of the ASUC auxiliaries on-campus businesses have been plagued by low revenue, sparking a contentious discussion on whether introducing more profitable business operations, particularly Panda Express, would be a good move. As a student representative on the store operations board, how would you effectively balance the auxiliaries' need for profitable businesses and students' interests as to what kind of businesses are on campus?
So I agree, we do need to increase revenue in the ASUC. That is paramount. The lower Sproul businesses right now, not all of them are necessarily increasing all of that revenue, it's true. We do need to find other sources. But we also need to make sure that we have student input into what's going on. As someone who's been in the store operations board meetings constantly, as someone who's seen what it's like to have student protesters in the meeting, students expressing their voice, I think it's really important for us to agree to find businesses that will be supported by our students on campus. If we have businesses that are coming in that students don't necessarily support, we're talking about a revenue stream. We're assuming that this revenue stream is going to come in and we're going to benefit from it. But if students don't support the business, we're not going to make any of that money. We need to find ways to make sure that we get businesses into Lower Sproul that includes that has an input, right? And we can do that by a lot of different reasons. Store operations board are not always shown, there's no attendance unless students are there to protest and to express an opinion, but we need to make sure that store operations boards are being publicized massively. We need to make sure that we have students represented there all the time, not just when one certain business is coming in. We need to make sure that we stick to our values as a campus, that we know what our traditions are, that we preserve these traditions that we kept for so long at UC-Berkeley, that we brag about as the #1 public institution in the nation. We need to keep that, and we need to sustain that and find ways of making sure that our businesses that are coming in are socially responsible, are environmentally sustainable, are at par with UC-Berkeley as an institution. And we can only do that if we have student input into that process. Because students are the ones that will determine the future of those businesses. It's not up to the auxiliary. The auxiliary is not the one who's going to be consuming there. It's the students. So if we bring students, if we bring businesses that are not supported, we're not going to succeed. So we need to make sure that students are prioritizing that process. The auxiliary can't make that decision on their own. We need to voice our opinions for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll keep this brief because I sort of already answered a lot of this question, but I guess now that I have time, I'll talk about some more ideas. So first, the president is able to appoint a representative to the student store. It's one of his or her appointments, and I believe it's a really important one and one that wasn't discussed this year or talked about. And when the student store is our biggest revenue stream, I think it's really important to have a discussion about that and who gets appointed and what they talk about and what they do at the student store, and utilize that as a way to communicate with students about what the student store is doing, what they're offering, how you can make it more appealing for everyone involved. Also, besides, I did what Officer said, in that when students are complaining and when there's a lot of outrage or voicing of opinions about something, then when profitability and giving money back to the students is the ultimate goal, you do have to question whether or not it will be as profitable as some people say. So I think it's a very important thing to take into account. And that's why I also want to talk about other sources like better advertising pamphlets, making the ASUC seem more appealing. Like, other schools, UCLA, Santa Barbara, San Diego, have really good ways and really good advertising means of reaching out to students, showing them how you can get involved, what the student voice is. A large part of the problem is our mechanism is to create more student committees and try to get people involved, but in the end, there's going to be a cap on that because so many students want to get involved and you're still not going to be able to incorporate the entirety of the student body. So, to reference back to an earlier point, I think one thing that is responsible to send out to all your listservs is the store operations board's agenda, what you're going to talk about, and start this dialogue early on. Because the reason we're in the situation we're in is because the panel discussion started 2 years ago when Naya reached out to the group without the student's voice. And I agree that's a complete problem. And so when we start anything next year, even if it's other solutions and being able to multitask, like case competitions, reaching out to the students about that, talking about what the options are, saying it at the beginning so we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're saying, oh, we're already 2 years down the line, we're going to be dipping into the negative next year, and so we're kind of stuck. I don't believe we're stuck. I believe there's always alternatives out, and as all those ideas I mentioned, and I guess that's why I addressed it in the first question of one of my platforms, and it was asked again, is because it is very important. And as a manager of the ASUC, it's something we need to do better and manage it with a more professional and a more strategic approach. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker.
This is a good time to remind ourselves that this is a public university, that the university is paid for by the public. And so when we're talking about universities and students deciding, having to vie off against each other over how to run our own ASUC our own building, that's kind of ridiculous. And what we have currently is tokenism. We have a representative who's part of a committee in which the student is outnumbered by university representatives, and that's not democratic. I think I would appoint someone to such as the store operations board, where that person would be someone who would come back with regular reports and raise issues that are new issues and demands on that board. We need to have lowered prices for textbooks, things like that, and and other issues such as what's happening with Panda Express. The students' voices need to be really heard and fought for. We need to organize the student body to win things like this. We just have to see ourselves in the ASUC as a fighting student union, not simply a liaison between the university and students, but something that organizes our collective power so that we actually are truly representing the student body.
Thank you. Thank you to all our candidates. Thank you for everyone for coming out. We encourage you to vote in next week's election and look out for the calendar.